Well, now that you've joined, Doug, I think we can get started. So I'll just say welcome, everyone, to this second annual Ambassador Circle event, virtual event. It's a pleasure to have you. I'm Nathalie Pratt. I'm co-president of the Circle with my colleague, Bruce McClellan. And for those I haven't met, I've been involved with NCC for 16 years now. Time flies. And at one point, I was chair of the Quebec Regional Board and chair of the National Board. Alors, pour mes collègues francophones du Québec et d'ailleurs, bonsoir, merci d'être là pour ce deuxième événement annuel du Cercle des ambassadeurs de conservation de la nature. C'est un plaisir de vous voir de manière virtuelle. Je suis Nathalie Pratt, co-présidente du Cercle des ambassadeurs avec mon collègue Bruce McClellan. The first thing I'd like to say is that we're streaming live from Toronto, from very balmy Toronto. And we acknowledge that it is the territory of many Indigenous nations, such as the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat people. And we also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. And we would like to thank these original caretakers and acknowledge their ongoing work across Canada. Bruce.
Thank you, Nathalie, and welcome everyone. It's great to be here with so many friends and colleagues who are passionate supporters of nature and the Nature Conservancy of Canada for this annual event. For those of you that I haven't had the pleasure to meet, I'm Bruce McClellan, and I'm the co-chair of this ambassadors program with Nathalie. And I've been volunteering with the NCC now for 24 years. Time does indeed fly. I was in the past a member of the Ontario Regional Board, the first regional board in Ontario when they were established. And then I also served on the National Board, and including a term as board chair from 2017 to 19. Je m'appelle Bruce McClellan et je co-préside le programme des ambassadrices et ambassadeurs avec Nathalie. Je suis bénévole à CNC depuis 24 ans. J'ai fait partie du premier conseil de l'Ontario et j'ai aussi siégé au conseil d'administration nationale. Et j'en ai été présidente de 2017 à 2019. It's great to be here with everyone today, and thank you for joining us. The idea of the Ambassadors Program came out of one of those food for thought sessions that we used to hold from time to time with board meetings. It was an idea that Jim Coots had encouraged, and he had actually seeded a bit of funding for those sessions where board members could talk about various ideas for how NCC could do things differently. And one of them was the importance of keeping in touch with former board and committee members like all of us. The way I would put it is that we do have term limits in our governance at NCC, but we do have no interest limits. And we know that because you finished your term, you still remain interested and keen. And we want to satisfy that interest by providing an annual update like today. We're going to give you a bit of an inside perspective on the organization and what's going on. And we hope that you'll also have brought some questions so that we can, when we open the floor later to Catherine or any of the staff. And we're also fortunate to have today our current board chair. Welcome to Mike Peterson. So that is the plan for today. We're going to talk some about NCC's plans for accelerating its activity. We're going to talk about a recent meeting in Montreal called the Convention of the Parties on Biodiversity, also known as COP15. And we're going to share with you some information on an exciting new project in southern Alberta. And on that point, I'm going to turn it back over to Natalie.
Yes, we're going to talk about the McIntyre project in Alberta. Now, this is a new project, so you're the first ones to hear about it, but it's really for NCC a major project. When it's completed, it's going to be a initiative that will cover more than 22,000 hectares in the Canadian prairies. And we'll have a small presentation for you a little bit later with a video. So this will be our main project, which we'll talk about. First of all, I'd like to introduce Catherine Grenier, who's our president and CEO. And Catherine will give us an overview of the very ambitious goal of NCC to double our impact by 2030. And she will also talk to us about COP15, the recent meeting in Montreal in December, and what it means for NCC and conservation. Catherine.
Merci, Nathalie. Thank you, Bruce. Bonjour tout le monde. Hi, everyone. It's a great pleasure to see so many familiar names joining today. It always gives me lots of confidence to know that you're always within the club of the ambassadors. This is an exciting time. Yes, we keep talking about a dual crisis because of climate change and biodiversity, but I would say there's also that brings lots and lots of opportunities. And as Natalie mentioned, we now have Canada and the world that's committed to protecting nature. In fact, they essentially committed to NCC's mission, and that gives us a lot of enthusiasm within the team. And just like nature loss impacts all of us, you all well know that we can all play a significant role in its recovery. And the world has set ambitious goals when they gathered in Montreal in December, protecting 30% of the lands and water. And at NCC, as Natalie mentioned, we really are up to the challenge. We're ready to pick up the pace. In fact, we've already picked up the pace, and I'll give you a few examples of that. And we're committing to doubling our impact by 2030. Alors, ce que je dis, c'est qu'à CNC, on est prêt. On s'est engagé à augmenter la cadence. Déjà, vous allez voir à travers les exemples, les équipes sont motivées à accélérer le rythme. Puis, on s'est engagé à doubler notre impact d'ici 2030.
Okay, thank you, Catherine.
Bruce, you're on mute, I think, sorry.
Okay, there, I'm unmuted. Thanks, Catherine. And it's great to hear that the world has committed to supporting NCC's mission. That's the best news I've heard all day. So can you, we've got a lot of people here who are on boards and committees, and they know some of the metrics and KPIs that used to be shared about success and how we're doing it in the organization. Could you talk for a few minutes on some of those KPIs, and how they look now, and maybe how they looked, in comparison to a few years ago?
Sure. I think the team has prepared a couple of slides to help you all follow along, but essentially we have been on a significant growth path. This is a growth path that started a couple of years ago, but I think here we're looking at a snapshot over 5 years, from 2017 to 2022. So just to give you a sense, our budget went from 90 million to, in 2022, 152 million. And this current fiscal year, we've actually hit the 200 mark, where our current budget is $203 million, which up to Q3 now, we feel pretty good about meeting expectation. Another important metric is the size of our endowment, and that's something that or maybe if you go back, Holly, to the previous slide, that's the size of our endowment, and that's probably one of the things that the team is most proud of. And I know a lot of you were instrumental in setting that up. That's about the longevity of the organization. So the size of our endowment has significantly grown, and we're now really getting really close to $200 million. Another important piece, if we look at revenues, if you go to the next slide, Holly, our revenues have essentially doubled in the last 5 years, where we were turning around 71 million in 2017 And in 2022, we closed the year at $181 million. The split remains about the same. So 60% private, 40% public. Over the years, there's some swing, but overall, that's really the target we're on. So we could see that the growth has happened across the various revenue stream. And one of the important piece, and that's something that's critical in our strategic plan, is we know to get to the growth that we want to get, we really need to grow the support. So you could also see that our number of donors have significantly increased, sitting at the end of last year as 233,000 donors. And the same with our supporters or followers, if you want, through the various channels that have essentially doubled from 154,000 to over 350,000. So that brings us now to a total support of roughly 500,000, which is halfway to the mark of the 1 million that we set as a target for 2030. Now, with this acceleration, that has also led in growth in our workforce. So over the 5-year period, we've grown capacity in the regions, as well as through some of the instrumental functions. We now have a staff force of 440,000 people. Sorry, not 1,000, 440, essentially with more than half that are below 35-year-olds. So really the next generation of leaders that are really joining NCC and make it a force for nature. One other thing we're really proud of is working towards building a strong culture, also diversifying our workforce. And we've been participating in a Great Place to Work survey for now 6 years in a row. It's been 6 years we're certified and slowly improving results. Our target is to improve by 2% a year. So we've been making that mark for the last couple years. Our goal is still by 2026 to make it to the top 100 list, all industry. I think I got from the group this year that we're getting pretty close. We did get some prize such as best workplace for hybrid work, best workplace managed by women as well. So we're hoping that we can make that top list. This is something that's very important for us. Some of the things we heard that are also very important is through the survey, we heard that our staff feel they can be themselves at work, and they're feeling they're treated fairly for the work that they do, regardless of their age, race, ethnicity, gender, or sexual orientation. In fact, on all of the inclusion measures that we really use for our EDI work, we're scoring above the 90%, which is really above benchmark. And that's something we take great pride of in being a very inclusive organization. Of course, all that is about leading to more conservation. So how does that fare? Well, we had set an initial 3-year goal of conserving at least 350,000 hectares. We're well on track to do that. In fact, we have bumped our target to make it 1 million hectare by 2025. This is a stretch goal, but I think with the pipeline, the projects we have in the pipeline right now, we're well on track to do that. Just for this year alone, we are expected to exceed 150,000 hectares. So that's big gains for conservation, and that's the big reason why we do it.
Thank you, Catherine. And can you tell us going forward, what will continued success look like for NCC?
Well, the first thing for us, we celebrated 60 years this year, and there's something to be really proud for the track record of delivering tangible results on the ground, or results we can walk on, as a lot of you have heard many times. So for us, the idea is to really build on that. And one of the common thread in all of our projects over the years has been partnerships. We really don't do anything alone. So the credibility of NCC is probably at its highest right now. The trust that our partners have in us is really what helps fuel our acceleration. So the goal is really to be a trusted partner and find solutions for nature in every province and across every sector. I mentioned that already the teams have picked up the pace. In fact, we've doubled our pace in the last 2 years. And just in this past year alone, there's over 100 conservation wins that have happened across the country. And I wanted to take the opportunity today to share a few of them, because I know you've been part in all of those success. Some of those projects will be very familiar to you. But among them, we have in Ontario a project that the team great pride in, the Boreal Wildland, which was the largest private conservation project in Canadian history. Twice the size of Toronto. It stores more carbon than 3 million cars over their lifetime. Like, it really is a significant lung. But one of the key pieces of that too was how fast the team was able to close it due to public support. So we launched a campaign in April of last year. The total project was 47 million. We had a $13 million gap. We thought it was going to take us a long time, but given all the public support following the announcement that got coverage all across the country, we were able to do a cash closing in August. And that was something that gave a lot of confidence for the team to keep going for those big prize, if you want. Another really cool project in Quebec, which some of you on the board that were recently on the board would have heard of many times, because it's a project that's long in the making, is our amazing Canuck partnership. This project, we keep adding pieces. This is a beautiful territory. We took the board there on a field trip this year, and I think those who are on the call today could probably say at which point this is an amazing project. But not only it's a great conservation project, but this will also be an open air lab devoted to studying the impact of climate change. So lots of partnership with university and the community. And I think this is a great example of how we do things when we work together. Other examples, and you'll hear, I don't want to scoop Lita, who's going to give you more after, but Canadian prairies, as you know, is one of the most threatened ecosystem on the planet. And we are making very significant commitments and gains. You will hear later our latest project where we're partnering with the ranching community to support sustainable production and nature, the beautiful McIntyre Ranch. And I'm happy to say that this morning, all the final paperwork got signed. So this project will not be announced until June because our great partner, the government of Alberta, because we're going into election, so it'll be post-election, but it's just an amazing project, and I can't wait for you to hear about it. Now another really project that's close to our heart is in PI, where the Atlantic team work with the Ibagwinnewa Mi'kmaq Nation to protect and care for Quessakek, and that's a beautiful island. It's called Olton's Island of Quessakek and Mi'kmaq on the north shore of PI. And the beauty there is we've protected, and we're now working hand in hand to return it to the Mi'kmaq community within the next 5 years. So these are just small examples of the great work that's happening. And we have more than 50 projects that are going to close before the summer. So the team is really, really busy. I think the main point for us is, although NCC has been there and done tremendous work, no organization, community, or government can succeed alone. And it really is a whole of society approach. So for us, it's really about mobilizing the partners, the different levels of government, Indigenous communities, all the sectors, donor, landowners, in order to make the progress that we're hoping to make. And it gives me lots of confidence, and I know it gives the team a lot of confidence to have you as close partners. That really allows us to commit and not only dream big, but try to make those big gains for conservation.
Wow. Well, thank you, Catherine. That was a pretty impressive answer. And congratulations on all the properties, but also for employers, these are challenging times post-pandemic. There's a lot of change in the workplace, and you've got a growing number of employees. So congratulations on those scores with the Great Place to Work survey. I wonder if you could comment for us now, and by the way, I see we're up to about 50 people. So if you've just joined us in progress, welcome. We are talking with Catherine Garnier about some of the updates and what's going on inside NCC. What would you say would be a few of the biggest challenges facing NCC right now? What are some of the barriers to success that we have to overcome?
Well, I think, there's no shortage of project and great conservation that needs to happen across the landscape, right? So our biggest challenge is really mobilizing and growing support, broadening our reach. as we like saying, those that know us, they love us very much, but we still have to really grow that network, diversify that network. And I think it's good to have the ambassador circles, because I think you can all play a role in helping us broaden that reach. It's essential not only for today's success, but it really is essential for the long-term longevity of the organization. And, you know, for us to reach those goals, we've set our ambition very high. When we say doubling our impact, you probably are well aware that we close or you know, in 2020, we finished the largest campaign in environmental history at $750 million. And that was, you know, John Lowndes' tremendous work. And now we've set our eyes on a campaign of $1.5 billion. So that's a very significant goal for us. And that will allow us to help unlock solutions for 30 by 30. That's why we aligned it to 2030. We've said we want to conserve at least 1 million hectares by 2025. We know we want to do this as partner and ally to Indigenous community to support Indigenous-led conservation. And as I highlighted, we know we need at least 1 million supporters to do that. So broadening, Bruce, is critical. What I'm happy to share, though, is already we're on track on the campaign. We're already almost a third of the way. So since 2020, we've raised 423 million. So that's significant. I can't wait to pass the 500 so we could get rid of the billion. I think it's going to give people a lot of confidence. But, you know, there's mobilizations, there's support, but really everybody on the call, if you could just help us, you know, reach out to one more individual, I think it's really going to help broaden the reach.
Thank you, Catherine. I think you're right that these are very, very ambitious goals, and thank you for reaching out to the ambassadors. I'm sure everybody on the call and all the ambassadors will want to help NCC reach its goals for 2030. On a more international level, we had the COP15 meeting in Montreal recently, and a significant accord, the Kunming-Montreal Accord on protecting biodiversity. How does that impact NCC? Does it change its fundraising goals? Does it change its strategic plan? And overall, does it change conservation in Canada?
Well, I'd like to think that it will change in a sense that it's galvanizing support now. And sometimes people say I'm in my own fishbowl and I read too much about this, but I hope it you know, Montreal, as I like to keep saying it, I think it brought biodiversity and nature a bit more mainstream than it was. Certainly when we're looking about the coverage, like it was talked about by a lot of people and lots of sector in society, which I think is something really important. For us, we're energized by the outcomes of the conference, right? It just validates the work that we're doing. As I said in the opening, it sort of validates our mission, which is really good. We're in the second year of our strategic plan. So obviously, as we're crafting our strategic plan, we were looking at what was happening elsewhere. And we were always thinking we may need to do some tweaks following COP. But in fact, COP was really validating. What we felt is the ambition was right, the priorities were right, so we were really aligned. So I think for the team, it just gave us a big dose of energy. And now what we're looking at is implementation. You know, these are great commitments, but it has to turn to delivery and execution. So that's a piece that we keep reminding our governance players. And the other thing too, we're looking forward to see how much of that talk is going to translate into action. There was a lot of corporate presence at COP15 in Montreal. In fact, I think there was more than 3,000 businesses registered there, which is great. But how much of it will go from talking about it to actually into action is the question that still remains.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I think the team from NCC was, you had a few people there at
yeah, we had a small and mean team. We had decided, and we'll be talking with Don in a few minutes, but we had decided to be very focused in our presence. So participate on panel, be there when it matters, but not necessarily be there by our size. And I think from that perspective, we really delivered. And I think NCC's credibility was well recognized.
Catherine, if I could ask about government partners, and you know, it's always been a part of NCC's success that all parties love us, and that's great. And if we have a $1.5 billion campaign, and our average year is about 40% public, that means we're hoping for about $600 million of government funding. How would you characterize our relationship with governments, and does the Montreal conference open up new money for us?
I would like to think so. You know, the first thing is Canada's made some big, bold commitments, but Canada currently sits at 14% of protected land. And, you know, it's sad to say, but in 2021, all of us together, all levels of government, all players only added 0.2% to the database. So if you're thinking of the pace to get that extra 16, we're nowhere near the right pace collectively. So I think that's opening up the eyes of all levels of government. I would say probably all party, because the beauty is it's not a Canada's commitment now, it's a world commitment, right? That people have to abide by. The one piece that for us is important is our relationship with the current federal government is great. Just this last month, Environment Canada just awarded us with an extra $25 million of year-end funding, essentially money that they had to spend by March 31st. And because they really trust our capacity to deliver, they turn and say, hey, NCC, can you expedite project through your pipeline so we get good conservation done? So I think that shows it's a good proof of the level of credibility we have as a delivery partner. One of the places where we're seeing lots of growth is at the provincial level. In fact, COP brought some provinces on board that we didn't really expect. And being over there, we had a lot of meeting with ministers, very senior bureaucrats, and it's leading to agreements across the country to help them deliver on the planning, but also on the tools that could be done, and expanding a bit of our work. In some provinces, we were really focused on private lands. In others, we were already getting involved in crown lands and unlocking solutions. And now what we're seeing is more of that across the board. So for me, government funding, federal government is a very significant partner, but we're really trying to grow all the provinces as well, because I think that's going to help.
Great, fantastic, thank you.
And maybe what I'd like to do too is invite a special person with us today, Dawn Carr, who's our Director of Strategic Conservation. Dawn was also officially the NCC delegate on the Canadian delegation, and she was instrumental in NCC's success at COP. So welcome, Dawn. I'd like for you to share a bit of your experience with the group. And
Okay,
I love the background.
Oh, I had to bring the background in. So thank you, Catherine. Hello, everybody. What an amazing room. Bonjour à tous. As Catherine mentioned, I'm the Director of Strategic Conservation, and I participated at COP for the entire duration. But I'll start just by saying I'm one of those new employees that joined this great place to work in 2021. And the whole reason why I joined NCC was to grow the alignment that NCC has with national and international major conservation commitments. So it's been a year and a half since I've been in this role, and it has been a phenomenal opportunity to look at NCC's work and to understand just how significant a contribution this organization makes to what Canada is working to achieve and how we contribute on an international scale. So it's all that big thinking that NCC has been putting forward in its strategic plan. And this totally aligns with the big thinking and ambition of COP15. So it was mentioned at the beginning, Bruce, that COP15 was the 15th Conference of the Parties for the UN Convention of Biodiversity Conservation. And it was a big deal. It was a really long-awaited meeting where 190 governments sought to adopt a new agreement that would set us on a path for stopping biodiversity loss. It's got the level of ambition that Catherine mentioned that everyone was hoping to see. And we came out with 23 new targets, and it's all toward 2030, which is aligned to NCC's strategic plan. And these were really big decisions that came out of COP15. In particular, it was mentioned 30 by 30. We are going to protect 30% of our lands and waters by 2030. And also from a financial standpoint too, there was a big roundup of at least $200 billion US annually that will be sought and sourced from both public and private entities. So there, you can see a picture of me there. That was me as part of the Canadian delegation, and it really was an instrumental opportunity for us at NCC to demonstrate our significance with partners, whether it be government, industry, or others that we'll get into.
Now, Dawn, those are amazing commitments and we really applaud it, but can you tell us a bit how you think the government of Canada will deliver on its commitment to this agreement, given the complexity of who needs to be involved and sort of the mosaic of governance on the Canadian landscape?
Well, you're absolutely right. It's incredibly complex, given Canada's federation, and really any individuals, entities that interact with the land across the landscape, lands and waters, such as agriculture, forestry, mining, oil and gas, different levels of government from municipal, regional, provincial, national, Indigenous governments and nations. We are all working together, and we must work together in order for this agreement to be successful. It really is going to take all of us. And I got to say, from my experience looking at from the outside in at NCC, and now that I'm a part of it, this is where NCC shines, is in this kind of complexity across the landscape. Catherine just showed us pictures. I'm inspired when I look at and see all of the different projects that my colleagues in NCC have worked to achieve. We are a trusted partner. We are that trusted partner on the landscape in communities that is able to bring all of these different partners together to seek out conservation solutions. So I think we're incredibly well suited to help support the government of Canada and all partners achieve the ambition that we see now in this new agreement. And Catherine, I know one of the questions that you would be asking me is, why are these agreements, these big international agreements, why do they really matter to people and nature? And this is the kind of question that's easy to answer, and it's because we are nature. I mean, those of you on this call, we don't need to convince any of us, but we are absolutely dependent on nature for our survival. So this agreement is putting us on a path to ensure our own longevity, and that we're able to sort of meet the commitments that are required for our own health and well-being.
And I think, Dawn, one of the things we were really pleased to is to see that the implementation direction that comes out of the agreement also not forces, but really recommend this whole of society approach, right? Alors, un des éléments majeurs aussi pour nous, c'est qu'on voit que dans l'entente, on prône beaucoup cette participation-là pan-sociétale, je pense, qui est essentielle, puis qui reflète vraiment la façon de faire de CNC, right? It really reflects the way NCC works.
Yes, no, I completely agree with you. And, if I was to ask you a question, what does this mean for NCC?
Well, I think we've talked about that a lot, right? It aligns with our vision to do more, to double our impact. For sure, the most notable target of 30 by 30. People were saying, are we going to have in Montreal this kind of Paris agreement? I think it gives that same focus and energy. And for us, just to put that in perspective, 30% of Canada is the land is 1.6 million square kilometers. So that's the size of both Manitoba and Ontario combined. And sometimes it's important when you have those big numbers to bring it back just for people to realize what does it mean. And I think for NCC, it means that we're going to continue to do the work that we do in high biodiversity critical places, but that we will also continue to unlock those solutions when there's private interests on crown lands, where there's multiplayer and a deal needs to be brokered, right? And that's what I always say with provincial and federal partners. If it's crown land, crown to crown, that's not where NCC is useful. But as soon as there's private interests, so it's crown and private sector, it's Indigenous, that's where there's a lot of collaboration and negotiation that needs to happen. And that's where NCC's unique skill set is very helpful. The other piece too is to get to 30 by 30. we absolutely must use all the tools in the toolbox. I think there's unanimity that we will not get there by just protected areas. This isn't the answer. We need to look at corridors. We need to look at different uses on the land. So one of the big thing NCC promoted at COP15 was what we call other effective conservation measures and OECMs. And for those of you that have marketing background, you're going to tell us this is terrible. You don't call something other unless you want it to fail. Well, the IUCN did. So that's the international appellation. I think for us, we refer to it as more conservation areas. But that's a very significant tool that allow for different uses on the land. That's going to be significant in the prairie grassland. Working with the ranching community is very significant tool as well in the forestry sector. So that's a place where NCC can continue to push the envelope. Same with Indigenous protected and conserved area. I think everybody agrees that a big chunk of the 30% will come through Indigenous-led conservation. We're strengthening our capacity to support those initiatives. We're strengthening our relationship to help nation be able to advance Indigenous-led conservation. So I think, Dawn, it fits really well with what we do and with our ambition, and it, to some extent, it provides even more legitimacy to the work that we're already doing, right?
Yeah, no, I really do agree with you. And I think from all the conversations that we had at COP15 and the leadership we showed around growing literacy, around OECMs, which really are, those are, when we talk protected and conserved areas, OECMs are the conserved areas. And they really are an incredibly interesting and important fit for NCC. They fit so well with the way that we do work. And OECMs, as you can see here, they're areas that don't have conservation as their primary purpose, which includes lands like ranch lands and in sustainably managed forests. It's those protected areas within those forests that have biodiversity values. Those all need to be brought to life. They're all the tools that we need to contribute to 30 by 30. And we really do have a unique role to offer support in ensuring that that we do the most that we can to recognize great conservation work where it happens. And I know that we're going to be speaking to this soon, and I'm really excited for our next speakers as well. But I appreciate the opportunity to be on this call, and thank you so much. It's really exciting work that NCC is leading.
Thank you very much, Dawn. And I think I hope you get the message. It's clear we got our work cut out for us, but we're really up for the challenge, and the team is really mobilized behind it. We have our commitment of protecting at least 1 million hectares by 2025. And you will hear now how we're off to a good start with the acquisition of McIntyre Ranch, which is a mind-blowing, beautiful, immense working ranch in the Milk River Ridge in Alberta. And that's also a great example of what an OECM is. Now, let me introduce you to Lita Pizderek, who's our grassland stewardship manager, but is really our fearless deal maker on this project. And I will have her share more information about it. Lita.
Hi, thanks everyone. Thank you, Catherine, for that introduction. And right on cue, my dogs are announcing my arrival of my children home from school, so ignore that. Yeah, thank you so much for having me here today. I am just so thrilled to be able to give you all a sneak peek into what the Alberta team has been working so hard on for the last 2 years. And you know, if you are from Alberta, I do see some familiar faces on the call. So I'm sure you've heard of the McIntyre Ranch. Some of you have been on the ranch, as it's very well known for its size and beauty. So it is one of the largest privately owned ranches in Alberta at over 22,000 hectares, which is equivalent to over 55,000 acres. The ranch is situated in southern Alberta, approximately 50 kilometers south of Lethbridge, and I'll show you a map to give a better context of where that is in a bit here. And it's located on the Milk River Ridge. And because it's a solid contiguous block of intact native prairie, it just makes it all the more unique and special, especially to an organization such as NCC, whose goal, as you all know, is to protect native habitat. And that's why Larry Simpson, many have whom you will know and is pictured here on the right in the photo, along with Ralph Thrall III, who is the president, CEO, and owner of the McIntyre Ranch. That's why Larry approached the Thralls over 30 years ago, actually, with the notion of putting a conservation easement on the ranch. And this was an on again, off again conversation right up until the spring of 2021, where the conversation got a little bit more serious again. And that's when we embarked on this enormous task of creating a conservation easement that will protect the McIntyre Ranch in perpetuity. And I think it should be noted that this, I believe, is going to be the largest easement in Canadian history, and is the first time that two land trusts have come together to purchase a conservation easement as co-holders. We are very excited and happy to be partnering with Ducks Unlimited Canada on this project. And I guess this just goes to show how important it is for collaboration when it comes to achieving our large conservation goals. So a little history on the ranch itself. It was established in 1894, and William McIntyre owned the ranch, and then his son Billy McIntyre took over until 1947 for a total of 53 years. And Ralph Thrall Sr. had a close relationship with Billy McIntyre, and this is what led to the Thrall family buying the ranch in 1948. And they have owned and operated it since then, with this year, I think, marking their 75th anniversary, which is really exciting. The McIntyre Ranch is a working cattle ranch where they run a Hereford and Red Angus purebred operation, as well as a crossbred herd of those breeds. And they implement a rotational grazing system where they only graze 25% of their range at one time. And they are known for this sustainable range management. It's quite unique, actually. Okay, so we're going to jump here to this map of Alberta. And I want to show you on the left in the light green is Alberta in pre-settlement. And so go back to 1877, the signing of Treaty 7, and the light green represents unaltered landscape. So there is no human alteration. Jump to the map on the right, and it shows Alberta at present time with human alteration on the landscape represented in red. And you can see that the last 150 years, we've seen a lot of change through acts of cultivation, urbanization, industrial activity. Much of our native prairie has been altered. And what's remaining is typically in these small little parcels that are really disconnected from each other. And unfortunately, we only have approximately 24% of our temperate grasslands remaining in all of Canada, and that continues to disappear, at an alarming rate, unfortunately. So just zooming in a little bit closer, I wanted to show the ranch boundary is this yellow down here in the south, and you've got Lethbridge up here, which I said was about 50 kilometers away to the north, and then the US border is down here in the white. And you can see this remaining green patch of that light green patch, and that's that undisturbed area, and it's amongst the sea of red. And so what I'm hoping from this image is that it really hits home to you guys that to understand why this project is so significant and that it's vital that we are protecting what little prairie we have left. Okay, so the ecological significance of this ranch is huge. The wide diversity of landscapes, including fescue grassland, mixed grassland, wetlands, and water bodies, offers an abundance of habitat for wildlife. The McIntyre project will be protecting roughly 1,200 hectares or 3,000 acres of wetlands, and more than 80% of the area has been designated by the province as environmentally significant area. And we all recognize that wildlife are not contained by these borders, right? And we must think about how those creatures migrate and operate through the different areas during their life cycles. For example, this area alone, more than 75% of it is within the top spring movement class for pronghorn. And it's also been designated as an important bird area. which means it's recognized as an international place of significance for conservation of birds and biodiversity. And actually, an inventory conducted in 2002 recorded over 150 wildlife species of birds, mammals, amphibians, reptiles, fish, butterflies, all the good things, many of which are species at risk. And in that same inventory, over 350 plant species were documented on the ranch. And I think over a dozen of them were actually rare species. So there's a lot of value there. And we know like grasslands are a working landscape, right? They support a wide range of animals and economies, from large grazers like cattle, which are an integral land management tool, to endangered fish and wildlife species. And really, there's just so many vital ecosystem goods and services that they offer. And unfortunately, today, I don't have a lot of time to go into the detail around all of those, but I know you guys get the picture of why they're just so critical. But I'd like to focus a little bit on rough fescue grasslands. Like, what is the big deal about rough fescue, right? Well, not all grasslands are created equal, and rough fescue is quite unique. It's so much so that it was designated as Alberta's provincial grass species in 2003. And this is the point, if you were on a tour with me out at the ranch, this is where I would kick you out of the truck and we would go hike through the fescue, and I would take a little bit closer look and tell you about how it's a perennial grass that grows in these tall, dense tufts, about averaging 2 feet in height. And it has stiff, narrow leaves that are rough to touch, hence the name, and has, if you dig deep down in, you'll see it has these rich royal purple colors at the base of the plant. And that royal purple is one of the reasons why this grass is referred to as the queen of the grasses. Another reason why is that she offers a vital source of forage for livestock and wildlife, especially as a winter grazing plant. And this is because this grass cures on the stem, and then it retains much of its nutritional value throughout the winter. And so McIntyre Ranch is actually one of the only ranches that I know of that can winter graze their cattle out on the native rangeland, and they don't have to provide supplemental feed. And it truly is the fescue that allows them to do this. And I think one of the biggest wow statements is that the McIntyre Ranch contains the largest undisturbed fescue grasslands in North America, and it's thought of maybe perhaps the world. So this is massive and exciting. But with the rapid decline of native grasslands, it has created a significant challenge for the species that have always lived there, migrated through this ecosystem, and depend on it for survival. And more than 75% of Alberta's species at risk are found in the grassland natural region. So the McIntyre Ranch really does offer a safe haven for these species that depend on this habitat. Another thing, this area is extremely important to traditional Indigenous and contemporary inhabitants, including the Piikani and Kainai peoples. And it is located close to some ceremonial areas for the Blackfoot peoples. And we really don't know a lot about this area as far as archaeological records go. And so this means we have a great opportunity to bring new archaeological and geological findings to our work, which I think is really exciting. And then looking forward, this coming year, we're going to be conducting an ecological baseline inventory on the ranch, and this will develop a stewardship management plan that we can implement in collaboration with the ranch owners and management team. And I mean, like we already talked about, this ranch is already famous. And so I'm so excited because with a conservation easement on it, it will become this model flagship showing how conservation and ranching really go hand in hand, and how we do depend on each other for success, right? So it's so exciting. I am just still buzzing from the news that everything got registered and signed and submitted yesterday, so it's happening. And so I guess I'll just close off with where we are at our fundraising efforts on this project. This slide shows that we only have 14% of the total amount to raise left, which is about $5.3 million. So we are well on our way to having a successful campaign and closing this project this year. So that's about all I've got for you right now. And again, I want to thank you so much for this opportunity to share a little bit about this magnificent project that has consumed my life for the last 2 years. And all of these images are photos I got to take while I was out on the ranch. And I just feel so grateful that this is my job. So thank you to all of you guys for your support in the work that NCC does. It really means a lot as a staff member. So thanks. Oh, and we have an exciting video. We're going to share a video for you guys. So enjoy.
With the conversion of grasslands, we've got about 24% of our temperate grasslands left on the Canadian prairies.
The species that depend on the grasslands are losing their homes. 75 to 85% of our species at risk live in our grasslands.
A lot of times people think that we can have just these little remnant postage stamps of habitat and species will be okay. That's not true. A lot of them depend on large contiguous blocks of that ecosystem to be able to survive.
The opportunity with McIntyre Ranch, it's one of the largest ranches in Alberta that will have the opportunity to help conserve forever.
This family is very focused on leaving a legacy, ensuring that after they're gone, this land will remain intact.
Listening to the peacefulness, seeing the raw natural beauty that this land offers, helped me understand, on the one hand, how insignificant I am in the grand scheme of things, and yet it's also helped me to realize I do play a role in preserving it, and it's an important role, because together we can do good things.
The Nature Conservancy of Canada and Ducks Unlimited Canada are working together to conserve the McIntyre Ranch. Right now, you have an opportunity to make conservation history and create a lasting legacy that will help protect the prairies for generations.
Thank you. Thank you, Lita. Thank you. This is, I think, an amazing project, and it's the proof of what NCC does best when it works with partners, when it has enthusiastic employees and people on the ground who are very determined to make a difference. And I hope this sparked the interest of all of our ambassadors on the call today, because I'm very, very happy to announce that our first ever Ambassador Circle field trip will be at McIntyre Ranch. So please make a note in your calendars. We will be visiting with Lita on September 29th of this year, which is a Friday. So this is open to all ambassadors. We still have to work out the details exactly of itinerary and all of that. But this is going to be a great event. Alors pour les ambassadeurs, j'espère que vous avez aimé cette présentation et je suis très contente d'annoncer que notre première visite terrain aura lieu en septembre au McIntyre Ranch. Donc, nous allons pouvoir visiter cette propriété extraordinaire le 29 septembre, qui est un vendredi, et vous aurez donc plus de détails dans les semaines à venir.
Great,
Bruce,
and
yes.
thank you. Thanks, Natalie. And I also would like to, in addition to thanking Lita, thank Catherine and Dawn. We really appreciate you being here today to update us, to talk about the recent events and the time you've taken to prepare. So we're very grateful. And Catherine, I did note that for your 1.3 $5 billion campaign announcement, that you'll feel much better when you have another $77 million to make it only less than a billion that has to be raised. So I'm sure we all noted that as we plan our giving for 2023. So we do have a little bit of time left, and we have just under 50 people still on attending. And Natalie, I wonder if you'd like to moderate and see if we have some questions from our,
Sure.
audience.
And please use either the virtual hand, put up your hand if you have a question, or write it in the chat, and then we'll take questions. On prend des questions en français ou en anglais. Pour Catherine, pour une des présentations qu'on a eues, une des présentatrices, ou encore pour Mike Peterson, qui est notre président du conseil. So I'll be waiting for questions. Okay, so we have a question here, and probably for Catherine or Don, on right after COP15, how is NCC going to be involved in the after COP15?
Dawn, I would suggest you go and share some of your work plan there.
Okay, sure. We are going to continue to be involved between now and 2030. So my work plan under strategic conservation is taking a look at exactly what are we contributing to the global biodiversity framework, that agreement, so that we can measure our success against it. I have no doubt that the story that we're going to be able to tell in 2030 about our contribution is going to be really meaningful. So I'm really excited to participate in that. And we're also going to be continuing to stay in touch with all the federal, provincial, territorial governments, Indigenous conservation leaders, municipalities, industry leaders, as we work together around opportunities to learn how best we can share information and support each other in our shared priorities around trying to get to 30 by 30. So we're really tapped into that community, and we'll be continuing to advance that work pretty eagerly and earnestly, that's for sure.
Thank you, Dawn. Another question here about the McIntyre Ranch.
Mm-hmm.
So the question here is about the partnership with Ducks Unlimited, and is this an equal split and not spit, as it was written in an equal split, or something else?
Right, and so that's a great question. It is not equal. It's we have different contributing financial contributions from, so Ducks, I believe, is contributing about 35%, NCC 65%. There might be a little bit of difference in that as the negotiations progressed. And with that too is an equal share in leadership. So NCC, for the most part, is going to be the lead on this project going forward, but with the support of DUC. So it's an interesting, I mean, like we said, this is the first time we've embarked on a partnership like this with an easement, and we're all excited, but there's, it's going to be a growing experience, and we're going to have a lot of lessons learned. We didn't even know that if we could register an easement on title with two land trusts as holders. So it's exciting, right? Like I said, to achieve those big conservation projects, this might be what we need to be doing. So yeah, we're both contributing in our own ways.
And I think it's a great example of how when we partner together, we could do way more. And I think it leads the way for additional partnerships. So that's something that we will really leverage. And I think, Lita, you're doing a really good job with Ducks to really leverage each organization's kind of unique skill set, right? That reflects the landscape with some of the wetland and some of the area where we have more expertise. So I just think it's something. Ducks just had a new CEO appointed last week. We had lunch together in Ottawa, but what we were saying already is we could do way more together. So hopefully that's a start for many more.
Yeah. That's a good start, as you say. Another question on the project, an ambassador that's asking, how can ambassadors help, the best way to help on this wonderful project?
I'm sure
Can
Lisa,
I
you have
say-
some very specific ideas.
we need to fill that gap. That $5.3 million is what we're after right now. I think that's the most tangible way to help. But I mean, you can help in other ways. You can get the word out there. You can express and really educate folks on why conservation and ranching do go together. A lot of people still don't understand that connection, and that without some sort of the agricultural industry, we would be losing our prairie landscape at a more alarming rate. So we do in Southern Alberta anyways, and in our prairie provinces, we do depend on the cattle industry. And I think there is some misconceptions around that, as far as, you know, that cattle are perhaps bad for the environment. And in some cases that can be true, in some practices that can be true. However, in our prairie grasslands, we really do need that land use, that landscape use to continue to protect, to provide a reason why we would not till that remaining prairie up, right? So just education, awareness, and fundraising is where we're at.
And I think, this is McIntyre is a bit of a signature project, but we will also use it to launch a broader prairie grassland campaign with the 3 central regions working together. This is going to be launched in June, but we're committing to protecting at least 500,000 hectares of grassland. And that's about a third of the $1.5 billion campaign that we're trying to push in that area. So as Lita said, explaining to people why grassland matters. I mean, I have great supporters that sometimes come to me saying, can we plant trees on the grasslands? Just plant more trees. And so there is a lot of literacy that needs to be done for the grasslands. Like Canadians in general need to love the grassland. So if you can help in that way, I think that's very useful.
Thank you, Catherine and Lita. I don't have any other question in the chat box. Anybody have, before we close this meeting, if anybody else has questions?
I think Stephen has his hand up.
Okay, I don't see him. Okay, Stephen?
Yep. Very important question, Nathalie. I've marked down the 29th. I'm excited, but on condition that Rooney and Alvarez are there to greet us. Are they going to be there? They're Albertans. Pierre? He's still with us?
Still there?
Okay.
I will be there, I promise.
Good, thank you. Okay.
Good.
And Anne, is Anne still there? Yes. I think Anne dropped off. All right, thank you. It's a super idea, and I'm really excited. I think I'll be there.
Good question.
Wonderful.
Thank you, Stephen.
Good question.
Okay, any
So-
other questions?
Just
Thank
a
you so
statement, Natalie.
Much for that.
I will certainly be there.
I think there's going to be a big group of people, of ambassadors.
I know.
showing
It's gonna be
Is there a
fantastic.
limit? Is there a limit as to how many of us could be there?
I think they're working out the details. We've been hosting tours on the ranch all last summer, and so the numbers range around a dozen people is about what we can accommodate, just because it is like massive in size. So just navigating across the ranch is difficult, and so too big of a group makes it a little bit more challenging. And just having facilities and that, it's quite remote. So I'm gonna say probably cap it at 12 people, give or take, but that's not for me to decide. That's the organization.
We may need a few days on the ranch. I think.
Oh yeah, I know.
So Natalie, we need to get our dibs in early. Is that the?
For sure, for sure.
Okay, I'm on.
Good.
So we've gone over our hour, and I know we're losing a few people. We should probably wrap questions now. And if you're interested in our field trip, I recommend you email ambassadorscircle@natureconservancy.ca. There's the address on the screen. let us know your interest as soon as possible. And, you know, we also know that our various regions have ambassadors groups as well and organize local field trips. And, you know, that's a fantastic part of how we all stay together and in touch with the NCC. So thank you, everybody. It's been a pleasure. And there will be a recording of our webinar made available to you. And I know Natalie's going to say farewell in a moment, but I just want to thank all the staff who supported us today in putting this event together. Catherine, of course, for her great leadership, and Dawn and Holly and Michelle and Kyria and Alan and Lita. And I apologize if I've missed anybody, but thanks everyone for joining us, and thanks for the staff. Thanks to the staff again for organizing such an informative event. It's truly inspiring. Natalie, over to you to close.
Yes, well, just thank you everybody for joining us. I think we are a very great group, and I think NCC is showing such leadership. It's really bringing a lot of enthusiasm. And as you said, thank you to the staff. Thank you for the presentation, Dawn and Lita. And we'll be in touch very soon to give you more information, and we welcome all your questions and suggestions for other activities, and we'll see some of you in Alberta. Thank you. Alors, merci de vous être joint à nous ce soir. Merci pour votre participation. J'espère que vous êtes enthousiastes maintenant, maintenant qu'on a parlé de tous les beaux projets de conservation de la nature. Et n'hésitez pas, si vous avez des questions, si vous avez des suggestions, donc n'hésitez pas à nous contacter. Et vous aurez des nouvelles du Cercle des ambassadeurs très bientôt.
Merci beaucoup, Nathalie et Bruce, pour votre leadership. Thank you very much for your leadership. Bonne soirée tout le monde. Merci beaucoup.
Bye.